the speed exercise for 3 minutes. Okay, so again, here, let's review this. Go back to where you originally started, and then you're going to cover the same amount of lines in 3 minutes that you did in 4 minutes using your finger as a pacer. And then when you're done, I want you to go. So, begin. Okay. Remember that comprehension is not as important as getting to the end. So you're just going a little bit faster this time. Okay, you're 1 minute in. Okay, you should be halfway there. Okay, that's 2 minutes. You have 60 seconds left. Make sure you make it to that last mark in 60 seconds. And if you happen to have finished it already, then just keep on going. You have 20 seconds. Make sure you get there in 20 seconds, whether you're understanding it or not. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and stop. Wonderful, great job. Now, so what we just did, I want to review what we just did. You originally read something for 4 minutes. You figured out how many lines that was by marking the beginning, marking the end. You didn't have to count it. Then I asked you to read for 3 minutes, that same amount of space, the same amount of lines in 3 minutes that normally took you 4 minutes. And so what we're doing, again, going back to the metaphor of lifting weights or adding an extra bat into your swing, is we're adding more resistance. We're forcing you to go faster, and by exercising that, you're going to grow stronger. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to do the 2-minute speed drill. The 2-minute speed drill. And again, what we're going to do is you're going to return now back to the beginning mark. Go back to the beginning mark where you initially started the 4-minute reading exercise. And I'm going to ask you to cover the same number of lines now in 2 minutes using your finger, your left finger as a pacer. Now, to answer your question about the left hand and the right hand, you can alternate. If you've been practicing diligently for a couple of weeks now, you can alternate between using your left and right hand. Okay, so get ready and begin. Reading for 2 minutes, so you're doing it twice as fast. The objective is to get to this last mark in 2 minutes. underlining the words with your left finger and as you read. Okay, that's 1 minute. You should be halfway through your reading. You have 60 seconds to get to the last mark. "30 seconds. You have 30 seconds. Doesn't matter if you're understanding or not, 30 seconds to get to that mark. 20 seconds. Keep going, keep going. 10 seconds, beginning now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Great job, great job. So, as your personal trainer, I have to say you're doing a remarkable job with this reading because you just read what I asked you to do twice the amount I literally did the twice the amount of rate that you did the first time. So, job well done. We're going to do it one more time now, and this time is the 1 minute speed drill, okay? The 1 minute speed drill. Okay, you're going to return back to the beginning mark. You're going to cover the same number of lines, this time in 1 minute, using your finger as a pacer, your finger pacer, or your visual pacer, your highlighter, your pen. Okay, you ready? Get back to the beginning mark. And now you have 60 seconds to read that same amount of material starting now. Faster, faster, faster. You should be halfway there, 30 seconds, starting now. The whole outcome, you're not supposed to be understanding this at all. Faster. 20 seconds. You have 20 seconds to get to that ending mark. Move your finger across the page, even if you have to cover 2 lines in 1 stroke. 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Go fast, fast, fast. Get to that end mark. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop, please. Great job. Now that last one is something that I know stressed and stretched you at the same time. So what you had to do there required you to go 4 times faster. So if you started at, let's say, 300 words a minute as an example, then you're going 1,200 words a minute. So you don't want to beat yourself up if you weren't able to reach it towards the end. The purpose of this exercise, though, was to really give you contrast. It's the equivalent of like somebody going through, and let's say you're in a race car going 200 miles down a straightaway, and then let's say later on that day, you're like closely after that, you're driving through town going at 40 miles an hour. 40 feels unbelievably slow in contrast, and that's what we're creating here. As you are required to go faster, you have to be able to build those muscles, those mental muscles, if you will, make those kind of connections in order for you to be able to do it. And so what we're going to do now, and this will be the last reading exercise, is I want to help you to determine your new reading rate now. In the beginning of this session, we did like a 1 minute exercise. Now we're going to duplicate that. I'm going to ask you to pick up where you left off. Okay, so now you're reading brand new material, and I want you to notice where that mark is. That mark at the beginning spot, which it's already marked, right? Because it was the last spot that you marked. And so it already has the pen or pencil mark or the post-it or the paper clip. And I'm going to ask you to read for 1 full minute using your finger as a pacer. And then when I call the 60 seconds is done, I'm going to ask you to mark the ending spot. Okay, so it's exactly the same. And I want you to read how you would read, how you feel comfortable reading, and using your finger as you read. Okay, so get ready, get set, and go. And stop. Great. And now put a little mark in the margin where you left off. And what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to go and write down your new base rate. Your base rate again is your reading rate. You can do it in this case lines per minute. So I want you to count the number of lines you just read in the past 60 seconds. And notice as you're counting, if you're using your finger or pencil to count with, how you naturally and organically want to use your finger to be able to pace yourself, be able to focus your eyes and your mind. Okay, when you have that rate, I want you to be able to look at it, and if you've made a measurable difference, if you increased even just a little bit from what you rated as earlier today, when we first started this session together, then I want you to pat yourself on the back, literally pat yourself on the back for me and congratulate yourself, because what you want to do is you want to be able to congratulate yourself and reward your incremental improvements, because it doesn't seem like a lot now, but over the course of 21 to 30 days or ongoing, you can begin to see how little things make a lot of difference. Even if people increased on 1% every single day on any kind of task, after it wouldn't even take them 100 days to be able to double their effectiveness on it, only because that 1% starts compounding on top of each other. And the reason why I have you write this down is because what you write down, it becomes more real. In fact, what you measure is what you can manage, right? What you measure, you can manage. Whether it's your body in different ways of measuring it, or if it's your finances, or if it's your business, what you can measure, you can manage better. All right. And so what we're going to do now is one of the comments that you sent me is what's the essence of what are the key things that that I want to walk away with. When I say I mean you. What are the 1 or 2 ideas that you want to walk away with from this program? Well, the first thing is, and this is unbelievably simple, but do not let the simplicity of this affect you. I mean, it's profound, and it actually affects you in a kind of non-negative, positive way. Because in actuality, the first rule of quick reading, rule number 1, is if you want more speed, then use your finger when you read. If you want more speed, if you want greater speed and you want to increase your rate, then use your finger while you read. Okay, and we talked about this because there's a reason why the majority of all speed reading programs that exist out there are based on using your finger. And one of the questions that you submitted to me was that, well, do I have to use my finger all the time? And the answer I would say is it depends on what your outcome is. Will you likely be reading faster than if you don't use your finger than when you started this program? Sure, that's a very clear and possible possibility. If there's any kind of combination that makes any sense. But certainly you will always read faster using your finger, using these strategies than without it. All right, because of all the reasons we mentioned before that. Quick reading rule number 2, I would say, has to do a little bit more with comprehension. That if you want better comprehension, then ask more questions. Ask more questions. And so what I'm putting out there as a general theory right now that we could test together, you and I, is that if you're ever reading something that you're not really interested in, you're probably not getting a whole lot out of it, right? Because an interest, by the very nature of being interested in a subject, you're naturally asking yourself questions, because that's all a lot of learning is. It's the process of asking and answering questions. I mean, that's a lot what thinking is. That will be when you ask yourself what is thinking, notice that it's a question. And the reason why questions are so powerful is, I mean, you're familiar with the quote, right? Ask and you shall receive, right? That each question in your mind acts like a magnet. It's like information is flying at you at 200, 300, 400, 500, 800, 1,000 words per minute. And be able to see that, and let's imagine that actually information coming at you that quickly. What's going to stay in your mind is going to be the things that you have questions about. You have this thing in parts of your brain that are dedicated towards, directing your focus. Things like your reticular activating system, your RAS, is basically out there trying what's important to you. One of the things that could help direct it, besides the things that you feel emotions about, are things like questions. Like if I ask you to look around right now, look around where you are in your environment right now, and tell me, look at everything right now that's green. Anything that's green. What's green in this environment? What's green, green, green? Look around, look around, look around. And I want you to close your eyes now, and I want you to tell me everything around you that is blue. Now it's kind of interesting because there's a law that was created in science, not created but discovered, called 7 plus or minus 2 out of Harvard, that your mind can only focus on 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. So generally in the neighborhood of 5 to 9 bits of information. And so you want to really hone what that focus will be. And questions are the things that really charge something. So when you ask yourself your question, what's in the room that is green, and then what you're doing is you're also not paying attention to what may be blue. So you want to be able to ask that question as well. So it's kind of like information's flying at you. And back in the day, let's say 100 years ago, back in schools, or even 50 years ago, or even 25 years ago, when there wasn't as much information to be able to be absorbed. We know that the half-life of information now is very, very short. Some people estimate it's anywhere from 2 years. Some people say it's 6 months, that the information literally will be double that exists every year or two. And so maybe 20, 30 years ago, you could actually teach somebody by just pushing information into their mind. You could say 1492, Columbus quote unquote discovered America, or glucose is like we could talk about these different formulas and give people facts. You could push it in because there's not that much competition for knowledge, for what's important. But nowadays there's so much information. I think the things that we really get inside of our mind is not information that gets pushed into our mind, but rather information we pull into our mind. And that's what questions do. They literally attract and pull information inside. And think about it. If you don't have questions, if you're really bored about a subject, have you read something, got to the end, just you honestly don't even remember what you just read? You probably don't have the interest, which probably means you are not asking quality questions or quantity level of questions. And if you have no questions, then you have no answers, right? In fact, I would say that questions are the answer when it comes to comprehension. That if you're ever, and this is speed aside, I'm talking about fully smart reading, just reading more intelligently. If you want to get more out of it, you want to ask the questions first. Like even go back to grade school, let's say high school. When you take a test, a standardized test, Like here in the States, you have standardized tests like the SATs. SATs, and you have your math section, you have a verbal section, you have a section on reading comprehension. One of the cardinal rules is, you want to, if you have a timed test and you're reading information, they have all these questions, multiple choice questions at the end. Any kind of good tutoring system will teach you to read those questions first, right? You want to read those questions first, because how do you know what the author thinks is important? So you're going back, asking the questions first, so then when you're reading it, you're like, oh, there's an answer, there's an answer, there's an answer, there's an answer. And that's the power of questions, okay? In fact, I say that if you really want to deepen your relationship to what you're reading, all right, if you really want to deepen your comprehension, I'm going to teach you another distinction, and I call it the 3 R's. The 3 R's to better comprehension. The 3 R's. If you want better comprehension from the information that you're processing, especially written information, I have 3 things that you want to be able to do, all right, to boost your comprehension. The first one is read. And that is not a joke. But obviously that should come first. If you want better comprehension, it helps to be able to read it. Okay? The second thing is actually what I call record. Record. And the recording is a process of taking notes and writing down what you read. All right? And the third thing is relate. Relate. And relate is a kind of a word I'm using is to be able to share the information, to talk about what you're actually reading. Okay? So let's go into it. It's the reading, we've been doing since day one. The recording part, though, what I'm going to ask you to do is take notes on what you read. So specifically for the fiction reading, and the reason why we're practicing in fiction is and this is one of the questions that we also got posted that you asked me, is can I practice this in my nonfiction reading?